From love to tragedy, father and mother kill daughter in shocking murder case. In the heart of England lies the city of Warrington, a place known for its rich history and vibrant community. Located in the beautiful county of Cheshire, Warrington is a city where modern life meets the charm of the English countryside. The city is famous for its lush green parks, bustling markets, and a strong sense of community that brings people together. Warrington has grown steadily over the years, becoming a thriving hub with a mix of cultures and traditions. England itself is a country with a deep cultural heritage, known for its contributions to literature, science, and the arts. From the iconic landmarks of London to the rolling hills of the countryside, England has always been a land of beauty and diversity. It's a place where history is woven into the fabric of everyday life, with castles, museums, and ancient towns telling the stories of its past. But even in a place as peaceful and welcoming as Warrington, dark and tragic events can unfold. Behind the picturesque streets and friendly neighborhoods, a heartbreaking story emerged, a story that shocked not just Warrington, but the entire nation. It's the story of a young girl named Shafilea Ahmed, whose life was cut short in a way that no one could have ever imagined. This is a story of love turned to tragedy, of cultural conflict, and of a family torn apart by unimaginable choices. Shafilea Ahmed was born on July 14, 1986, in Bradford, West Yorkshire, a bustling city known for its rich industrial history and vibrant cultural diversity. Her parents, Iftikhar and Farzana Ahmed, were immigrants from Pakistan, a country where family, honor, and traditional values hold significant importance. Iftikhar had moved to the UK at the tender age of 10, along with his family, in search of a better life. The Ahmeds were like many other immigrant families, navigating the challenges of adapting to a new culture while trying to preserve their own. Iftikhar's journey to England was not just a physical one, it was a journey of identity, a struggle to balance the expectations of his heritage with the reality of life in the West. As a young man, Iftikhar had once embraced the freedoms that England offered. He explored the Western lifestyle, even marrying a Danish woman, Vivi Lone Anderson, with whom he had a son named Tony. But this marriage was never accepted by his family back in Pakistan. They pressured him to return and fulfill his duty by marrying his cousin, Farzana, as had been arranged when they were children. Farzana, unlike Iftikhar, had spent most of her life in Pakistan. She was deeply rooted in the customs and traditions of her homeland. When Iftikhar brought her to England, she was already pregnant with Shafilea, their first child. The transition to life in a foreign country, far from everything she knew, was difficult for Farzana, but she clung to her cultural values, determined to raise her children according to the traditions of her upbringing. Together, Iftikhar and Farzana created a home in Warrington, Cheshire, a home where the walls echoed with the expectations of their culture and where the air was thick with the weight of honor. Shafilea was a bright and ambitious girl. From a young age, she was aware of the pressures placed upon her, but she also dreamed of a life beyond the confines of her family's expectations. She attended Great Sankey High School and later its sixth form centre, Barrow Hall College. Shafilea was an A-level student, a young woman with a sharp mind and a clear vision for her future. She wanted to become a solicitor, a goal that symbolized her desire for independence and the ability to make her own decisions in life. But Shafilea's dreams were not shared by her parents. Iftikhar and Farzana had different plans for her. They wanted her to follow the traditional path, one that involved an arranged marriage to a suitor from Pakistan, a life dedicated to upholding the family's honor. The clash between Shafilea's desires and her parents' expectations created a storm within their household, one that would only grow more intense as the years passed. Behind the closed doors of the Ahmed household, life was far from peaceful. Shafilea was subjected to a strict and oppressive environment. Her every move was monitored, her choices scrutinized. The pressure to conform to her parents' wishes was relentless. She was expected to dress modestly, behave in a way that was considered appropriate, and above all, she was expected to accept the life that had been planned for her. But Shafilea was not one to surrender her dreams easily. She resisted, she argued, and she fought for her right to live her life on her own terms. The tension in the household often erupted into violence. Shafilea was beaten, both physically and emotionally, by the very people who were supposed to protect her. The abuse she suffered was not just a punishment for her defiance, it was a means of control, an attempt to break her spirit and force her into submission. In February 2003, Shafilea ran away from home, seeking refuge with social services. On her application, she detailed the abuse she had endured, stating, "One parent would hold me whilst the other hit me." These words were a cry for help, but they were also a testament to the torment she faced within her own home. But Shafilea's escape was short-lived. She was eventually returned to her family, the place where her hopes and dreams were being slowly crushed under the weight of tradition and control. Her parents, desperate to rein her in, took her on a trip to Pakistan later that year. This trip would prove to be a turning point, a moment when the battle between Shafilea's aspirations and her parents' demands would come to a head. In Pakistan, Shafilea was introduced to a suitor, a man her parents had chosen for her to marry. But Shafilea refused. The very idea of being forced into a marriage she did not want was unbearable. In a moment of sheer desperation, Shafilea swallowed bleach, an act that many believe was a suicide attempt. Her parents claimed it was a mistake, saying she drank the bleach during a power outage, thinking it was mouthwash. But this explanation was flimsy, a thin veil over the truth that Shafilea was willing to go to extreme lengths to escape the future her parents were trying to impose on her. The bleach severely damaged Shafilea's throat, leaving her in constant pain and requiring regular medical care. But even as her body healed, the emotional scars deepened. She returned to England with her family, but the trip had only intensified the conflict within the Ahmed household. Shafilea's parents, particularly Iftikhar, were growing increasingly concerned about the impact her behavior would have on the family's honor. The tension was palpable, the atmosphere in the house charged with fear and frustration. Then came the fateful night of September 11th, 2003. The details of what happened that night are chilling, a descent into the darkest depths of human behavior. The family had gathered in their home on Liverpool Road in Warrington, the usual tensions simmering just beneath the surface. Shafilea, as always, was the focal point of her parents' anger. The argument that ensued was intense, a culmination of all the frustration and anger that had been building for years. According to the testimony later given by Shafilea's younger sister, Alaisha, the situation escalated beyond anything that had happened before. Iftikhar and Farzana decided that they could no longer tolerate Shafilea's defiance. The fear of public shame, the dread of losing face within their community, pushed them to a decision that would destroy their family forever. In the dim light of the living room, Shafilea was held down by her mother. Farzana's grip was firm, her face a mask of determination. Iftikhar, the man who had once cradled his daughter in his arms, took a plastic bag and forced it into her mouth. Shafilea struggled, her body convulsing in terror, but there was no escape. The bag cut off her air, the life within her slipping away as her parents held her down, the very people who had brought her into the world, now taking her life away. The room was silent, save for the muffled sounds of Shafilea's final breaths. It was a silence that echoed with the finality of what had been done. When it was over, Shafilea's lifeless body lay still, her dreams, her future, extinguished. The fear of dishonor had driven her parents to commit the unthinkable, to kill their own daughter in a misguided attempt to protect their family's reputation. After the murder, there was no mourning, no tears shed for the daughter who had once brought joy to their lives. Instead, there was a cold and calculated plan to dispose of the body. Iftikhar and Farzana wrapped Shafilea's body in a blanket, carefully covering the evidence of their crime. Under the cover of darkness, they drove out to the remote banks of the River Kent in Cumbria, over 100 kilometers away from their home. There, they discarded her body, hoping that the river would carry away their guilt, that the world would never know the truth of what they had done. But the river did not wash away their crime. Months later, in February 2004, heavy flooding in the area revealed Shafelea's remains. Her body was found dismembered, hidden among the debris washed up by the rising water levels. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, a grim reminder that evil can lurk even in the most seemingly ordinary of places. The police were called to the scene, and an investigation was launched. The dismembered state of Shafelea's body made it difficult for pathologists to determine the exact cause of death. However, the items found with her body, a gold zigzag bracelet and a blue topaz ring, were identified by her parents as belonging to Shafilea. Despite this, Iftikhar and Farzana continued to deny any involvement in their daughter's death.
We appeal to the public, if anybody knows anything, to come forward.
For years, the case remained unsolved. The police questioned Shafelea's family, including her parents, but no solid evidence linked them directly to the crime. The investigation stalled, and it seemed that Shafelea's murder might go unpunished. But in 2010, a breakthrough came in the most unexpected way. It was none other than Shafelea's younger sister coming in to avenge her sister. By August 2010, 7 long years had passed since Shafilea Ahmed's tragic death. During those years, the Ahmed family had lived under a dark cloud, with the unsolved mystery of Shafelea's disappearance casting a long shadow over their lives. But behind the closed doors of their home, a darker truth festered. A truth that Alisha Ahmed, Shafelea's younger sister, had carried with her all this time. Alisha had been a witness to the horrors that unfolded within their family. She had seen the arguments, the beatings, and the escalating tensions that led to Shafelea's murder. But for years, she had remained silent, trapped by fear and the oppressive control of her parents. The knowledge of what had happened to her sister weighed heavily on her, a burden she could no longer bear. She needed a way out, a way to free herself and her siblings from the grasp of their parents. And so, in a desperate and risky move, she devised a plan that would set into motion the events that would finally bring justice for her sister. On the night of August 25th, 2010, Alisha arranged for a group of young men to carry out a robbery at her parents' house in Warrington. It was a daring and dangerous plan, one that would involve her entire family. Alisha knew that her parents would never suspect that she was behind the break-in. She counted on the chaos of the robbery to create an opportunity for her to finally speak out. As the robbers entered the home, the situation quickly escalated. The entire Ahmed family, Alisha, her parents, her brother, and her sisters, were inside the house when the intruders burst in. The robbers were aggressive, demanding money and valuables, and the family was thrown into panic. Alisha, playing her role as an innocent victim, watched as the scene unfolded, all the while knowing that this was the moment she had been waiting for. But the robbery did not go entirely as planned. The situation became increasingly chaotic, and eventually the police were called. When law enforcement arrived on the scene, they quickly took control, arresting the intruders and, to Alisha's surprise, taking her into custody as well. The police believed that Alisha might have been involved in orchestrating the robbery, and their suspicions were not entirely misplaced. In the interrogation room, Alisha was faced with a difficult choice. She could continue to play the role of the victim, denying any involvement in the robbery, or she could seize this opportunity to finally reveal the truth about what had happened to Shafilea. The pressure of the situation, combined with the years of guilt and fear, pushed Alisha to make a decision that would change everything. With trembling hands and a heavy heart, Alisha began to talk. She told the police that the robbery had indeed been a setup, her setup. But the story she told them was far more shocking than anything they had expected. Alicia confessed that the robbery had been a desperate attempt to escape from her parents, to force the truth about her sister's death into the open. She recounted, in harrowing detail, the events leading up to Shafilea's murder. Alicia told the police how her parents had been trying to force Shafilea into an arranged marriage with a suitor from Pakistan, a marriage that Shafilea had rejected. The refusal had enraged their parents, particularly their father, Iftikhar. For him, Shafilea's defiance was more than just disobedience. It was a direct threat to the family's honor. The fear of public shame, the dread of being ostracized by their community, had driven Iftikhar to make a horrifying decision. Alicia described how, on that fateful night in September 2003, the tension in the household had reached a breaking point. Shafilea had once again refused to accept the marriage, and the argument that followed was more intense than ever before. Alicia explained how her father, unable to tolerate Shafilea's resistance any longer, decided to end the conflict in the most brutal way possible. As her mother held Shafilea down, Iftikhar grabbed a plastic bag and forced it into Shafilea's mouth. Alicia could still remember the terror in her sister's eyes, the muffled sounds of her struggles as she fought for breath. The moment was seared into her memory, a moment of unimaginable horror that would haunt her forever. Alicia's confession was a bombshell. The police, who had spent years investigating Shafilea's disappearance with little success, were stunned by the revelation. Here, finally, was the truth they had been seeking. Alicia's testimony provided them with the crucial link between Shafilea's death and her parents, connecting the dots in a case that had long seemed unsolvable. Armed with Alicia's confession, the police moved quickly to build their case against Iftikhar and Shafilea Ahmed. They conducted further investigations, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses who could corroborate Alicia's account. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, painting a picture of a family torn apart by cultural conflict and the obsession with maintaining honor at any cost. The prosecution's case against Shafilea's parents was strong, but it was Alicia's testimony that ultimately sealed their fate. When the trial began in May 2012, Alicia took the stand and, with remarkable courage, recounted the events that had led to her sister's death. Her words were powerful and chilling, leaving no doubt in the minds of the jury about what had happened that night in 2003. Alicia spoke of the years of abuse that Shafilea had endured, the constant pressure to conform to their parents' expectations, and the fear that had permeated their lives. She described the suffocating control that her parents had exerted over them, the physical and emotional violence that had been a part of their daily existence, and she told the court how, in the end, that control had turned deadly. As the trial progressed, the prosecution laid out a compelling case that showed how Iftikhar and Shafilea had planned and carried out the murder of their daughter in a misguided attempt to protect their family's honor. They presented evidence that Shafilea's refusal to accept the arranged marriage had been the final straw, pushing her parents to commit the ultimate act of violence. The defense, meanwhile, tried to discredit Alicia's testimony, suggesting that she had fabricated the story as a way to escape her parents' strict control. They argued that there was no physical evidence directly linking Iftikhar and Shafilea to the crime, and that Alicia's account was unreliable. But the jury was not swayed by these arguments. The weight of the evidence, combined with Alicia's compelling and detailed testimony, was too strong to ignore. On August 3, 2012, the jury returned a guilty verdict, finding both Iftikhar and Shafilea Ahmed guilty of murder. The sentencing that followed brought a sense of justice to a case that had haunted the community for nearly a decade. The judge condemned the actions of Shafilea's parents, describing their crime as a gross betrayal of their duties as parents and a violation of the most fundamental principles of human decency.
If there is one thing that we pray will come from this, is that her beautiful face and tragic story will inspire others to seek help that make them realise that this kind of vile treatment, no matter what cultural background they are from, is not acceptable and there is a way out.
For Alicia, the verdict was a bittersweet victory. She had finally brought the truth to light, ensuring that her sister's death would not go unpunished, but the process had been deeply painful, forcing her to relive the trauma of her childhood and confront the dark reality of her family's actions. In the end, Alicia's bravery had given Shafilea the voice she had been denied in life and had secured the justice that she so deserved. In the years since the trial, Shafilea's story has continued to resonate with people across the country and beyond. Her name has become synonymous with the fight against honor-based violence, a symbol of the need to protect vulnerable individuals from the oppressive forces that seek to control and harm them. Shafilea's death, though tragic, has led to increased efforts to support those who find themselves in similar situations, ensuring that her legacy is one of change and progress. The community of Warrington, where Shafilea once lived, was deeply affected by her death. Neighbors, teachers, and friends who had known her struggled to come to terms with the fact that such a horrific crime could happen so close to home. Many questioned whether they could have done more to help Shafilea to intervene before it was too late. In the aftermath of the trial, organizations dedicated to combating honor-based violence saw an increase in calls for help from young people facing similar pressures. Shafilea's story gave them the courage to speak out, to seek support, and to fight for their right to live their lives free from fear and oppression. Her death was not in vain. It became a catalyst for change, inspiring action and raising awareness of an issue that had long been hidden in the shadows. Shafilea Ahmed's story is a haunting reminder of the devastating consequences when love is twisted by the pressures of cultural expectations and the pursuit of so-called honor. In a world where tradition clashed with the dreams of a young girl, the ultimate price was paid, a life cut tragically short. As we reflect on Shafilea's life and the unimaginable choices made by those who should have protected her, we are left with a powerful message. We must continue to challenge the injustices that hide behind closed doors. Let Shafilea's story fuel the fight against honor-based violence, so that no one else has to suffer in silence. Her legacy lives on, not just in the justice that was served, but in the awareness and change it has inspired. We owe it to Shafilea and to countless others like her to stand against oppression and ensure that their voices are heard.